Here's my favorite way to set up a D&D campaign that gives your players plenty of freedom in how they tackle it while you still get a solid structure to prep and build on. It's called the hub and spoke model, and you'll recognize it in some of my favorite video games like Mass Effect and Knights of the Old Republic. I didn't invent it, clearly, but I've had a lot of success using it at my table, and I think you can too. Here's how it works. Most campaigns that I run, and that you'll find in modules for that matter, have an overarching story, a plot that connects everything together. That doesn't mean I don't give lots of room for side quests or my players' ideas, but I like to have a general structure to base the game around. So consider the start of the main story the hub, whatever kicks the party off on their adventure. This can be a physical location like a home base or a city they return to throughout the campaign, or it can be a person, the old sage that sends them on their mission, the monarch who needs their help. It doesn't really matter how they get started, but what's important is that the adventure is split into different sections. They need to have multiple goals they can tackle and the ability to do them in any order. That's the spokes part of the equation, and it's the key to giving your players freedom within this structure. Let's use an example. Your party has arrived in the capital city, and the queen tasked them with defeating the lich you bought a really cool mini for. To do this, they'll need to reforge the Staff of Incredible Plot Relevance, which has been split into 4 pieces and cast into dungeons throughout the land. It doesn't matter which piece of the staff they go after first, just that they collect all 4 before the lich can amass their undead army and overrun the land. The hub in this case would be the capital city, and the spokes are all the different staff pieces they need to track down. That's all well and good, but now that they've got their quest, how can you possibly have all 4 of those adventures prepped and ready to go? That's the beauty of it. You don't have to. Instead of prepping 4 full adventures, you just need to plan the very start of each spoke, the city they'll arrive in to get info on 1, the combat they'll encounter en route to the 2nd, the wilderness they'll need to traverse to find the 3rd. By having just a little bit prepared for each, you'll be ready no matter what they choose, and then you can flesh out whichever spoke they decided on from there. You'll save yourself so much more time than if you're trying to prep an entire campaign from the very start. And if your party does something crazy to shake things up, you won't have to toss out tons of notes because you only have a little prepared. Sometimes DMs are hesitant to really let their players go wild because they're worried that all of their precious story writing will go to waste. With this method, you'll have less notes to be attached to and be more open to your players mixing it up. And depending on which direction they go and what happens on that leg of the quest, you can add in consequences for their actions to the other spokes. Here's an example using our staff collecting plot. During the first adventure, an important NPC dies who you were planning to help them traverse the wilderness on a later leg of the journey. Well, now they'll have to figure it out on their own, and what would have been an easy trip becomes a harrowing challenge. Or maybe the more pieces of the artifact they collect, the more the big evil lich starts to take notice of their plans, and so he sends his undead generals to confront them on the 3rd adventure, and that encounter will be radically different depending on the order they chose to do things in. To give you an example from my own games, I had the party tracking down elemental titans who had been imprisoned for centuries and were breaking free, and they needed to choose between taking on the Titan of Earth or Fire. They chose Earth, so by the time they reached the Fire Titan, it had grown so strong that it came bursting out of the dungeon, catching them off guard and leading the combat right then and there. By having a structure to build on, you're able to make sure their choices and actions can echo throughout the campaign. And of course, that's not even including all the other little things you can do to give your players more control over the story, like creating open-ended challenges that give them the freedom to solve things as they see fit. Your players will still be in the driver's seat, you're just giving them a roadmap so you don't have to make it all up as they go. How about your players' backstories? If you're like me, you love incorporating their goals, allies, and rivals into the campaign. Well, just tie different players' backstories into each of your spokes. The party paladin whose order was taken out by one of their own, that fallen warrior now works for the undead mage and will encounter your party as they go for the first staff piece. The druid's village that they left to go on the adventure looks like the lich's skeleton army is close and they'll need to rally the druids en route to staff piece number 2. Again, you're not trying to control the game and lock your players out of the creative process, but instead, you're making an outline that allows you to better incorporate what they want out of the campaign, while keeping you from having to prepare for every possible outcome. The hub and spoke model has been incredibly helpful for structuring my campaigns and helping me focus my prep in a way that's easy to change as my players make decisions and alter the story. It may not be for everyone. You can run a more linear game or a completely open-ended one and have just as much fun. But part of DMing is finding whatever balance works best for you and your players, and I hope that this will help some of you run the fun, dynamic campaigns you've been dreaming of. Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear how you structure your games of D&D, whether or not you use the hub and spoke model, in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, leaving a like is always appreciated, and you should consider subscribing to the Bards College. I make videos about D&D, DMing, and everything in between, so stick around. But for now, good luck, and remember, crit your players.